You're listening to 8158 Stories of Sacrifice, where we honor the bravery of the first responders and the families who stand behind them. Real people, real stories, real heroes. This is 8158.
Welcome back to the 8158 podcast, where we honor the lives, sacrifices, and legacies of first responders and the communities that stand beside them. If you've been listening for a while, you know that most of our episodes focus on the incredible men and women behind the badge, behind the wheel, behind the radio, or behind the bunker gear. We tell stories of courage, stories of sacrifice. But today, we're beginning something new. Every month, we'll be shining a light on organizations that are making a real difference in the lives of first responders, military members, veterans, and their families. Some of these organizations you've probably heard of. Others may be names you've never come across before. Our hope is that by sharing their stories, someone listening today may discover a resource they didn't know existed, or maybe they'll be inspired to support a mission that's changing lives every single day. Because honoring our heroes isn't just about remembering those we've lost, it's also about taking care of those who are still here. Today's organization spotlight is on the Thin Line Peer Support Team. Their motto is simple: no one fights alone. And after learning about who they are and what they do, I think you'll understand why those 4 words carry so much weight. Before we dive into the organization itself, I want to ask you a question. When was the last time someone asked a first responder, "How are you doing?" and actually meant it? Not "How's work?" "Busy shift?" "Did you catch the guy?" But genuinely, "How are you?" The truth is, in this profession, people are conditioned to answer that question with one word: fine. Even when they're anything but. Police officers spend their days walking into chaos that most people spend their lives trying to avoid. Firefighters watch homes burn to the ground while families stand helplessly in the street. Paramedics hold the hands of complete strangers during the worst moments of their lives. Dispatchers hear screams they can never unhear while never being able to physically help. Corrections officers work inside environments where danger isn't occasional, it's constant. Military service members and veterans often carry memories that don't disappear when the uniform comes off. And yet, many of these men and women go home, kiss their spouse, hug their kids, maybe eat dinner, maybe watch a little television, and tell everyone around them that everything is okay. Because somewhere along the way, many were taught that strength meant staying silent, that asking for help meant weakness, that if they admitted they were struggling, maybe they'd lose their badge, maybe they'd lose their gun, maybe they'd lose their career, or maybe people just wouldn't look at them the same. So instead, they carry it. One difficult call becomes 10. 10 become 100. 100 become a career filled with moments they never had the chance to process. Some eventually find healthy ways to cope, others don't. And that's why organizations like the one we're talking about today matter so much. Because sometimes the first step toward healing isn't sitting in a therapist's office. Sometimes the first step is simply talking to someone who truly understands what you've been through. Not someone who read about it, not someone who studied it in a textbook, someone who's lived it. Someone who's walked into those scenes, who's heard those radio tones, someone who's carried that weight. That's what peer support is all about. It's one first responder helping another first responder, one veteran helping another veteran, one corrections officer looking another in the eye and saying, "I get it." Not because they're guessing, but because they've been there. And for a lot of people, that's the conversation that opens the door to healing. It's not therapy, it's not treatment, it's not a diagnosis. It's simply the reminder that you're not carrying the burden alone anymore. And that idea that no one should have to fight these battles by themselves is exactly why the Thin Line Peer Support Team was created. After the break, we're going to take a closer look at who they are, where they came from, and how a group of dedicated volunteers is helping first responders, military families, veterans, and corrections professionals across their communities, one conversation at a time.
The stories you hear on the 8158 podcast are made possible by listeners, supporters, and our affiliate partners. Visit our website and explore the companies helping us honor heroes every week.
Welcome back. Before the break, we talked about why peer support matters. We talked about the reality that so many first responders and veterans carry the weight of their experiences in silence. But now let's talk about one organization that's working every day to change that. The Thin Line Peer Support Team is a nonprofit organization based in Connecticut, but don't let their location fool you. Their mission is one that resonates with first responders and military members everywhere. Their guiding principle is simple: no one fights alone. 4 words, that's it. But behind those 4 words is an entire philosophy, a belief that no one who has dedicated their life to serving others should ever have to face trauma, stress, or mental health struggles by themselves. The organization was founded to provide something that many people in these professions desperately need but often hesitate to ask for: someone to talk to who truly understands. And that's an important distinction. The Thin Line Peer Support Team isn't trying to replace licensed counselors or psychologists. In fact, they work alongside mental health professionals and know when it's time to refer someone for additional care. Instead, they serve as that first conversation, that first phone call, that first text message, that first, "Hey, can we talk?" Because for many first responders, that first step is the hardest one. Imagine you're a police officer who's just worked a traumatic child fatality, or a firefighter who couldn't save someone trapped inside a burning home. Maybe you're a paramedic who has spent an entire shift responding to overdoses. Maybe you're a dispatcher who listened helplessly as an officer called for help over the radio. Or maybe you're a corrections officer who witnessed violence inside the facility where you work. You know something isn't right, you're not sleeping, you're replaying the call in your head, you're becoming short-tempered at home. You stop enjoying the things you used to love. But picking up the phone to call a therapist, that can feel overwhelming. Not because therapy doesn't work, but because it can feel like a huge leap. That's where peer support fills an incredibly important gap. Instead of calling a stranger, you're talking with someone who's worn the uniform, someone who has stood where you've stood, someone who understands the culture, the dark humor, the shift work, the family sacrifices, the missed holidays, the adrenaline highs, and the emotional crashes that often follow. There's something incredibly powerful about hearing another first responder say, "I've been there." Not because they read about it or because they watched a documentary, because they lived it. And that's exactly what the volunteers with the Thin Line Peer Support Team bring to every conversation. The organization is made up of volunteers from a variety of public safety and military backgrounds. Their team includes law enforcement officers, firefighters, EMS providers, dispatchers, corrections professionals, veterans, chaplains, and mental health clinicians who all share one common goal: helping people before they reach a crisis point. One thing that really impressed me while researching this organization is their commitment to training. These aren't just well-meaning volunteers answering a phone. Every peer supporter completes specialized training through the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation, often referred to as ICISF. That training equips them with the skills to provide compassionate, effective peer support while recognizing when someone may need additional professional care. That balance is incredibly important. Peer supporters aren't expected to have all the answers. They're there to listen, to encourage, to connect, and when necessary, to help someone take that next step toward licensed mental health care. Another thing that stood out to me is who they serve. This isn't just an organization for one profession. Their doors are open to law enforcement, firefighters, EMS providers, dispatchers, corrections officers, emergency room personnel, active duty military members, and veterans, regardless of their discharge status. Think about that for a moment. Every one of those careers comes with its own unique challenges. Different uniforms, different job descriptions, different environments. But many of the emotional burdens are remarkably similar. Long hours, exposure to trauma, high-stakes decisions, missed birthdays and holidays, broken sleep, hypervigilance, and the pressure to always appear strong. The Thin Line Peer Support Team recognizes that while the uniforms may be different, the weight people carry is often the same. And perhaps that's why their mission resonates with so many. Because they understand that healing often begins with connection, with one conversation, with one person willing to answer the phone, with one reminder that says, "You're not alone." After the break, we're going to talk about something else that makes this organization unique: the meaning behind the different thin line colors, why representation matters, and how they're working to break the stigma surrounding mental health across every corner of public safety and military service.
We'd like to thank the companies that stand behind the 8158 podcast. Their support helps us continue preserving the stories of service, sacrifice, and resilience that inspires us all.
If you've spent any amount of time around first responders or the military, you've probably seen one of the many thin line flags. Most people recognize the thin blue line. Some know the thin red line. But what I found interesting while researching the Thin Line Peer Support Team is that they recognize something much bigger. Because service doesn't belong to just one profession. It belongs to everyone who answers the call. The thin blue line represents law enforcement officers who put themselves between danger and the communities they serve. The thin red line honors firefighters who run toward the flames while everyone else is running away. The thin white line represents EMS professionals, those who walk into the chaos carrying a little more than a medical bag, years of training, and the hope that they'll arrive in time to make a difference. The thin gold line recognizes the voice behind the headset, our emergency dispatchers. They're often the very first responder someone meets on the worst day of their life. They don't get to leave the chaos when they hang up the phone. They carry those voices with them long after the call ends. The thin silver line honors corrections officers. It's a profession that's often overlooked, but one that requires constant vigilance, incredible professionalism, and the ability to work in an environment where tension can become violent in an instant. And then there's the thin green line, representing the men and women of our military and, in many cases, our federal law enforcement agencies. Whether serving overseas or here at home, they carry experiences that most civilians will never fully understand. Different colors, different uniforms, different missions. But there's one thing they all have in common. They're human. Sometimes we have a tendency to put first responders on a pedestal. We see the badge, the turnout gear, the ambulance, the patrol car, the military uniform, and we think they're somehow built differently than the rest of us. The truth is, they're not. They laugh, they cry, they worry about paying bills, they celebrate birthdays, they miss anniversaries because they're working. They lose sleep, they carry guilt, they question themselves after difficult calls, and sometimes they go home wondering if they could have done more. That's not weakness, that's humanity. One thing that struck me as I explored the Thin Line Peer Supports team's mission is that they don't pretend that those burdens don't exist. In fact, they acknowledge them head on. They recognize that behind every uniform is a person, a husband, a wife, a mom, a dad, a son, a daughter, a best friend, someone whose life extends far beyond the shift they're working. And yet, despite all of that, many people in these professions still hesitate to ask for help. Why? Because the culture has often rewarded toughness. For decades, phrases like, "suck it up," "drive on," "leave it at work," "don't let them see you sweat." Those messages became part of the job. But here's the problem. Trauma doesn't care how tough you are. It doesn't care how many years you've worn the badge. It doesn't care how many deployments you've completed. It doesn't care how many fires you've fought or how many arrests you've made. Trauma has a way of finding the cracks that we all have as human beings. And if it's ignored long enough, those cracks often become much larger. That's why one of the most important things Thin Line Peer Support Team offers isn't just peer support, it's trust. Their conversations are confidential. That may not sound like a big deal to someone outside these professions, but inside this world, it's everything. Think about it. If you're worried that asking for help could affect your career, could change the way your supervisor looks at you, could impact your ability to carry a firearm, could cost you a promotion, or simply make people whisper behind your back, you might choose to stay silent. And unfortunately, far too many people have.
You're listening to the 8158 podcast, honoring heroes, preserving legacies, sharing stories of sacrifice.
Organizations like Thin Line Peer Support Team are working to change that culture by creating a safe place where people can simply be honest. No judgment, no lectures, no shame. Just someone who listens, someone who understands, someone who reminds you that needing support doesn't erase everything you've done for others. In fact, it may be one of the bravest decisions you'll ever make. Because courage isn't only running towards danger, Sometimes courage is admitting, I'm not okay, and allowing someone to walk beside you until you are. That's the heart of peer support. It's not about fixing someone. It's about reminding them that they don't have to carry the weight alone. When we come back, we'll talk about how organizations like the Thin Line Peer Support are funded, how listeners can support their mission, and why organizations like this deserve our attention, not just during Mental Health Awareness Month, but every single day of the year.
There's just something about that first cup of coffee. For a lot of us, it's not just a routine, it's a reset. Before the shift, after the call, or in those quiet moments when everything finally slows down. That's why we're proud to partner with Fully Involved Coffee, a brand built around something bigger than just caffeine. This is coffee for a cause. Fully Involved Coffee supports first responders, veterans, and the communities that stand behind them. Every bag, every cup is part of a mission to give back to those who serve. And the coffee itself is fire. Small batch roasted, high quality beans, bold enough to get you through long shifts, early mornings, and late nights. From strong, no-nonsense roasts to smooth blends and even flavored options, plus tea if that's more your speed, they've got something for everyone. This isn't just good coffee, it's coffee with purpose. Head on over to 911gogojuice.com, use the promo code 8158 at checkout to support the mission and save on your order. And when you sign up for their monthly subscription, you'll get 10% off. So whether you're on duty, off duty, or just taking a moment to breathe, Fully Involved Coffee, brewed for those who serve and those who stand beside them.
For the break, we talked about the different professions represented by the Thin Line Peer Support team and how, despite wearing different uniforms, so many of the challenges they face are remarkably similar. But there's one challenge they all seem to share, and it's one that's often invisible. The struggle to simply say, I'm not okay. Now, if you've never worked in public safety or served in the military, that might sound surprising. You might be thinking, why wouldn't someone ask for help if they're struggling? It's a fair question, but the answer is complicated. You see, from the very beginning of a first responder's career, they're taught to be dependable, to stay calm under pressure, to make decisions when seconds matter, to keep moving even when everything around them is falling apart. Those qualities are necessary. Lives depend on them. But somewhere along the way, many people begin to believe that being dependable means never showing emotion, that being calm means never admitting fear, that being strong means carrying every burden by yourself. And those aren't the same thing. Think about the number of times a first responder hears phrases like, shake it off, it comes with the job, you'll get used to it, don't take it home with you. Most of the time, those comments aren't made out of cruelty. They're made because that's how previous generations learned to cope. For decades, the culture in many departments was simple. You handled the call, you finished the paperwork, you got back in service, and you did it all again tomorrow. There wasn't much conversation about emotional wellness. There wasn't much discussion about trauma. And there certainly wasn't much encouragement to ask for help. Thankfully, that culture is changing, slowly. Not because first responders have become weaker, but because we've finally started recognizing something important. You can be incredibly strong and still be deeply affected by what you've experienced. Those two things can exist at the same time. Let's think about it this way. Imagine asking someone to carry a backpack. No problem. Now add another. It's still manageable. Then another, and another. Every difficult call, every fatal accident, every overdose, every suicide, every child abuse investigation, every fire, every shooting. Every notification to a family that their loved one isn't coming home. None of those experiences simply disappear when the shift ends. They go into the backpack. Maybe one by one, they don't seem that heavy. But over the course of a career, that backpack becomes incredibly difficult to carry. And here's the thing. No one else can see it. Your coworkers see you smiling, your family sees you trying to relax on your day off, your friends see you laughing at a barbecue. But inside, you're carrying years of memories that most people couldn't even imagine. Sometimes those memories show up as nightmares. Sometimes it's irritability. Sometimes it's withdrawing from the people you love, drinking a little more than you used to, feeling emotionally numb. Sometimes it's becoming hyper-aware of every exit in every restaurant you walk into. Sometimes it's simply feeling exhausted. Not physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And because those changes often happen little by little, many first responders don't even realize how much they're carrying until one day the weight becomes too much. That's one of the reasons organizations like the Thin Line Peer Support Team are so important. They recognize that you don't have to wait until you're at rock bottom before reaching out. In fact, they would probably tell you the opposite. Reach out early. Talk before the stress becomes overwhelming. Talk before the sleepless nights turn into months. Talk before frustration begins affecting your marriage, before you convince yourself that no one would understand. But here's the truth. Someone does understand. Maybe they're another police officer or a firefighter. Maybe they're a medic, a dispatcher, a corrections officer, a veteran. Someone who has answered the same kind of calls, faced the same difficult decisions, and asked themselves the same questions you've been asking. And that shared experience creates something incredibly powerful: trust. Not because they've lived your story exactly, but because they've lived a story that allows them to say, "You're not crazy, you're not weak, you're not alone." Sometimes that's all a person needs to hear to take the next step. And I think that's one of the greatest strengths of peer support. It doesn't begin with a diagnosis, it begins with a conversation. One human being sitting beside another and saying, "I've carried that backpack too. And maybe, just maybe, we can lighten the load together." When we come back, I want to walk you through what actually happens when someone reaches out to an organization like the Thin Line Peer Support Team. Because for many people, the fear isn't just asking for help, it's not knowing what happens after they ask. We'll talk about why that first phone call can feel so intimidating and why it might just be the most important call someone ever makes.
Support for this episode comes from Hero Link, connecting heroes with the trusted resources and organizations that make a difference. Learn more through our Support the Mission page.
Welcome back. I want to ask you to imagine something for a moment. You've just finished another shift. Maybe it was 12 hours, maybe it was 24. Maybe you worked mandatory overtime and you've honestly lost track of how long you've been awake. You climb into your truck, you shut the door, and for the first time all day, it's quiet. No radio, no sirens, no tones dropping, no dispatcher calling your unit number, just silence. And then everything you've been pushing aside all shift starts creeping in. The call with the little girl who reminded you of your own daughter, the overdose you responded to for the third time this week, the domestic violence call where you couldn't get there fast enough, the CPR you performed knowing deep down it wasn't going to change the outcome, the family notification you had to make before your shift even really began. You told yourself you'd deal with it later. Well, now it's later. You sit there with your hands on the steering wheel. The truck isn't moving. Neither are you. You've been telling yourself for months that you're okay. But today, you're not so sure. Maybe someone at work mentioned the Thin Line Peer Support Team. Maybe you saw one of their posts online. Maybe a coworker quietly slipped you their phone number. Maybe you've had it saved in your phone for weeks but never had the courage to call. Until today. Your thumb hovers over the screen, you take a deep breath, and finally you press call. Now let's stop there for just a second. Because I think a lot of people imagine that the moment they reach out for help, everything suddenly becomes formal. Like they're going to be interrogated or judged, or immediately told everything that's wrong with them. But that's not how peer support works. You're not calling to defend yourself. You're not calling because you failed. You're not calling because someone thinks you're broken. You're calling because you're human. And on the other end of that phone, there's another human being, someone who understands the profession, someone who understands shift work, someone who knows what it's like to miss holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, and family dinners. Someone who understands why certain calls stay with you long after the paperwork is finished. Most importantly, someone who listens, not to interrupt, not to lecture, not to diagnose, just to listen. Maybe they'll ask how long you've been feeling this way. Maybe they'll ask what happened. Maybe they'll simply just let you talk. And maybe for the first time in a very long time, you don't feel like you have to pretend everything is okay. That doesn't mean one conversation magically fixes everything. Healing rarely works that way. But it does mean you've taken the first step, and often the first step is the hardest one. One thing I appreciate about the Thin Line Peer Support Team is that they understand their role. They're not trying to replace therapists, psychologists, or psychiatrists. Instead, they're there to meet people where they are. For some, that conversation may be enough to help them process a particular difficult incident. For others, it may be the beginning of a longer journey toward healing. And if additional support is needed, the team can help connect people with clinicians who understand the unique culture of first responders and military personnel. That's important because not every counselor understands what it's like to work nights for 15 years. Not every therapist understands why someone can still hear a dispatcher calling for backup 10 years later. Not every mental health professional has firsthand knowledge of what it means to respond to tragedy over and over again. Organizations like the Thin Line Peer Support Team help bridge that gap. They remind people that asking for help isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where you don't have to carry everything by yourself. You know, one of the things we say a lot in public safety is, "I've got your back." You'll hear officers say it before serving a warrant, firefighters say it before entering a burning structure, paramedics say it before walking into an unpredictable scene. Corrections officers say it as they enter housing units. Military members say it before missions. I've got your back. It's a promise that no matter what happens, someone is standing beside you. Peer support is really an extension of that promise. It says, the call may be over, the shift may have ended, the uniform may be hanging in your locker, but I still have your back. And maybe that's why organizations like the Thin Line Peer Support Team are so important, because they remind us that being part of this community doesn't end when the sirens stop. It doesn't end when you retire. It doesn't end when you're having a hard season. This profession has always talked about brotherhood and sisterhood and family. Peer support is what that family looks like when someone needs help. It's not about fixing them. It's about walking beside them until they remember they don't have to walk alone. After the break, I want to talk about another group of people who often carry the weight of this profession without ever putting on the uniform. The spouses, children, parents, and loved ones who serve right alongside our first responders and veterans. Because when one person answers the call to serve, the entire family answers it with them.
Looking for products and services you can trust? Visit 8158podcast.com/support the mission to explore our sponsors. Every purchase made through our affiliate links helps support future episodes at no additional cost to you.
Before we move into our final thoughts today, I want to spend a few minutes talking about a group of people who don't often get recognized when we talk about public safety and military service. The families, the husbands and wives, the partners, children, parents, brothers and sisters, grandparents, the people who may never wear the uniform but live with the job every single day. When someone chooses a career in law enforcement, firefighting, EMS, corrections, emergency communications, or the military, it doesn't just change their life. It changes the lives of everyone who loves them. Families learn to celebrate birthdays on different days because mom or dad is working. They get used to holidays being interrupted by a phone call or a pager. They learn that vacations sometimes get canceled because someone is held over. They understand that there are dinners where the conversation suddenly gets quiet because something happened on shift that can't easily be put into words. And sometimes they become experts at reading the people they love. A spouse notices when their partner is quieter than usual. A child notices when mom doesn't laugh at the same jokes anymore. A husband realizes his wife hasn't been sleeping. Parents hear it in their son's voice when he says, "I'm fine," but somehow it doesn't sound convincing. Families often recognize the changes long before the first responder does, but they may not know what to do. Do they ask questions? Do they give them space? Do they encourage counseling? Do they wait? There isn't a perfect answer. Every family is different. Every person processes trauma differently. But one thing is true across every profession. No one should have to navigate those changes alone. When organizations like the Thin Line Peer Support Team step in to support a first responder or veteran, they're not just helping one individual. The ripple effect reaches everyone connected to that person. A healthier officer often becomes a more present spouse. A firefighter who begins processing difficult experiences may find themselves reconnecting with their children. A veteran who finally feels heard may begin rebuilding relationships they thought were beyond repair. A dispatcher who learns healthier coping skills may discover joy in life outside the communications center again. Healing has a way of spreading. Just as trauma affects entire families, healing can too. And I think that's something worth remembering. Sometimes we focus so much on the person wearing the uniform that we forget there's a whole team standing behind them. The spouse who keeps things together while they're working another overnight shift. The kids who wait to celebrate Christmas until dad gets off duty. The parents who still worry every time they hear about an officer-involved shooting on the news. The husband who quietly sits awake until he hears the garage door open after a late-night shift. The wife who knows that when her firefighter walks through the door without saying much, today was probably a difficult day. These families become incredibly resilient. But resilience doesn't mean they don't need support too. One of the most powerful things a family can do is simply create a safe place for conversation. Not pressure, not interrogation, just a place where it's okay to say, "Today was hard. That call is sticking with me. I'm struggling." Sometimes those conversations happen around the dinner table. Sometimes they're on the back porch after the kids have gone to bed. Sometimes they're during a long drive with no destination in mind. Sometimes they happen in complete silence with two people simply sitting together because words aren't enough. Those moments matter. And while organizations like the Thin Line Peer Support Team primarily provide peer support for first responders, veterans, and other public safety professionals, the work they do strengthens families too. Because when one person finds hope, everyone around them feels it. And I'd like to speak directly to the family members who might be listening today. Thank you. Thank you for the sacrifices that rarely make the headlines. Thank you for understanding missed holidays, interrupted dinners, canceled plans, sleepless nights, and the emotional toll this work can take. Thank you for being the steady voice on the other end of the phone after a difficult shift. Thank you for loving someone whose job asks so much of them. Your support matters more than you probably realize. You are part of this profession too. Maybe not by title, maybe not by uniform, but by the countless sacrifices you've made behind the scenes. And to the first responders and veterans listening, if you have someone in your life who has stood beside you through the difficult days, tell them thank you. Not just for what they do, but for who they are. Because none of us are meant to carry life's heaviest burdens by ourselves. Whether it's a spouse, a close friend, a trusted coworker, a peer supporter, or an organization like the Thin Line Peer Support Team, having someone willing to walk beside you can make all the difference. As we come back for our final segment, we'll talk about how every one of us, whether we wear a uniform or not, can help organizations like the Thin Line Peer Support Team continue making a difference in the lives of those who have dedicated their own lives to serving others.
Every purchase made through one of our affiliate partners helps offset the cost of producing the 8158 podcast, allowing us to continue sharing stories that deserve to be heard. Thank you for your support.
As we come to our final segment today, I want to leave you with one simple question. What if supporting first responders didn't always mean running into danger? What if making a difference was as simple as sharing a story, making a phone call, showing up to an event, or reminding someone that help is available? The truth is, organizations like the Thin Line Peer Support Team don't exist because they're profitable. They exist because people saw a need and decided they couldn't ignore it. They exist because volunteers stepped forward and said, "I'll answer that phone," because clinicians offered their expertise, because donors believed that protecting the mental health of those who protect us is worth investing in, because communities come together and recognize that taking care of our first responders doesn't end when their shift is over. Everything this organization does, from peer support and outreach to training and connecting people with additional resources, is made possible through the generosity of people who believe in their mission. That means every donation, every fundraiser, every volunteer, and every person who helps spread the word plays a part in changing someone's life. You don't have to wear a uniform to make an impact. In fact, some of the greatest supporters of organizations like this are everyday people who simply recognize the sacrifices first responders and veterans make. Maybe you own a local business. Perhaps your company is looking for a nonprofit to support during a community fundraiser. Maybe you're part of a civic organization, a church, or a veterans group looking for a meaningful cause to rally behind. Maybe you're a first responder yourself and you're listening today thinking, our department could really benefit from something like this. Those are all ways to make a difference. One of the easiest things you can do costs absolutely nothing. Share their mission, follow them on social media, read about the work they're doing, tell someone else about them. Because you never know who in your circle may be silently struggling. Maybe that police officer who always smiles at the coffee shop. Maybe the firefighter coaching Little League after working all night. Maybe the paramedic who treated your loved ones with kindness during one of the worst days of your family's life. Maybe the dispatcher whose calm voice stayed on the line until help arrived. Or maybe the corrections officer whose work often goes unseen and unrecognized. These men and women don't stop being human when they put on a uniform, and they don't stop needing support when they take it off. One of the things we've talked about throughout today's episode is that healing often begins with a conversation, but conversations don't happen if people don't know where to turn. That's why awareness matters. Every time you share an organization's mission, every time you recommend a resource, every time you encourage someone to reach out, you're helping break down the stigma that has kept so many people silent for far too long. Here on the 8158 podcast, we spend a lot of time remembering the heroes we've lost. Those stories matter. They deserve to be told. But I also believe one of the greatest ways we can honor their memory is by doing everything we can to support the heroes who are still here. Organizations like the Thin Line Peer Support Team are working every day to make sure fewer families experience unimaginable loss. They're helping first responders, veterans, dispatchers, corrections officers, firefighters, EMS professionals, and emergency room personnel find hope before a difficult season becomes a tragedy. And that's a mission all of us can stand behind. So before we close today's episode, I'd like to leave you with one simple challenge. This month's Organization Spotlight Challenge is easy. Visit the Thin Line Peer Support Team's website, learn about their mission, follow them on social media, share one of their posts, talk about what they're doing. And if you're in a position to give, whether that's through a financial donation, volunteering your time, or helping connect them with others who believe in their mission, consider becoming part of their story. Because organizations don't change lives on their own. People do. And every single one of us has the ability to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Coming up, one final thought before we wrap up today's episode. Behind every badge is a story, and behind every story is a sacrifice. This is the 8158 podcast, where we honor the lives and legacies of first responders and their families. If our mission speaks to your heart, if these stories move you like they move us, join us on Patreon. For just $5 a month, you'll get ad-free listening, exclusive merchandise, behind-the-scenes content, and video episodes only available to our patrons. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement, and you can be a part of it. Support us at patreon.com/8158podcast. Let's continue to share the stories that deserve to be heard. As we close today's episode, I keep coming back to those 4 simple words that have become the heartbeat of the Thin Line Peer Support Team. No one fights alone. It's a simple phrase, easy to read, easy to say, but if we're being honest, it's much harder to live. Because so many first responders, military members, veterans, dispatchers, corrections officers, firefighters, paramedics, and emergency room professionals have spent years believing they've had to carry everything by themselves. They've carried the faces they couldn't save, the voices they still hear over the radio, the calls that change them forever, the guilt, the grief, the anger, the exhaustion, and too often they've carried it in silence. Today's episode isn't about saying that peer support is the answer to every struggle, and it's certainly not about suggesting that asking for help is easy. Sometimes it's incredibly difficult. But organizations like the Thin Line Peer Support Team remind us that no one should have to take that first step alone. Sometimes healing begins with a counselor. Sometimes it begins with family. Sometimes it begins with faith. And sometimes it simply begins with another first responder sitting across from you and saying, "I've been where you are." That conversation may not erase the memories. It may not take away the pain overnight, but it can remind someone that hope still exists. And sometimes hope is enough to get through one more day. If you're listening today and you're part of the first responder, military, veteran, or corrections community, thank you. Thank you for the long shifts, the missed birthdays and holidays. Thank you for answering the phone when everyone else was running away. Thank you for carrying burdens that most of us will never fully understand. And if today has reminded you of someone, a partner, a coworker, a friend, or maybe even yourself, don't ignore that feeling. Reach out, have the conversation, ask the question, offer the support, because you never know when a simple phone call, a cup of coffee, or 5 quiet minutes of listening could change the course of someone's life. To the incredible volunteers of the Thin Line Peer Support Team, thank you for standing beside those who spend their lives standing for everyone else. Your work may happen behind the scenes, away from flashing lights and headlines, but its impact is immeasurable. Thank you for reminding our heroes that they don't have to carry the weight alone. If you'd like to learn more about the Thin Line Peer Support Team, visit their website at thinlinepeersupport.org. There, you'll find information about their mission, available resources, volunteer opportunities, upcoming events, and ways you can support the work they're doing every single day. We'll include links in today's episode description so you can connect with them directly. As always, we'd love to hear from you. If there's a nonprofit organization serving first responders, military members, veterans, or their families that you think deserves to be featured in a future organization spotlight, send us a message. One of the goals of this new series is to introduce our listeners to organizations that may not receive national attention, but are making an extraordinary impact in the lives of those who serve. Because every mission matters, every volunteer matters, every conversation matters, and every life matters. Thank you for spending part of your day with us here on the 8158 podcast. If today's episode meant something to you, please consider following the show, leaving us a review, and sharing this episode with someone who could benefit from hearing it. Those simple actions help us reach more people and continue sharing the stories of service, sacrifice, and hope that define this community. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and never forget, the badge may come off, the uniform may be hung in the closet, but the person wearing it still deserves someone to stand beside them.
Thank you for joining us on 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Every story we share is a tribute to the courage and resilience of first responders and their families. If this episode impacted, encouraged, or inspired you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who supports first responders. Follow us on all social media platforms at 8158 Podcast for updates. 8158 Stories of Sacrifice is a team effort. Rico brings the stories to life through casting, writing, original music, and editing. Brianne Shipley as production manager, handling booking, social media, graphics, promotion, marketing, website management, and logo design. Please visit our website at 8158podcast.com. For questions, collaborations, or to share your story, our email address is contactus@8158podcast.com. Until next time, let's continue to honor the legacies and remember the sacrifices of those who serve, every brave man and woman on the front lines, protecting and defending us all. This is Rico signing off and honoring 8158.